It is Thursday, August 15th, 2024. And of course, a lot of things are taking place in the world. So we'll get to those. And of course, I've got Sasha Starr and Rick Rosner with me. We'll see who else joins us as well. But yeah, there are a lot of things that are taking place in the world, including Russia to evacuate thousands more from the Kursk region attacked by Ukraine. So Russia is paying up to $4,000 a month for people to dig trenches to hold back the Ukraine offensive. So apparently Putin has found some money, so he's going to pay people to dig trenches, and we'll see whether that works or not, and all along those lines. And Israel is sending a high-level team to Doha talks, seen as a possible last chance for a deal. So that's something else going on in the Middle East. So definitely there are new rounds of those Gaza ceasefire talks in Doha, and we'll see if they have any results or not. And like I said yesterday, Prime Minister Kishida is not seeking another term, meaning Japan will get a new prime minister and all along those lines. So we're going to see who they will be having as their leader. Apparently, they've got some folks in mind, and we'll see which one of those folks steps out of the fray to take the leadership role and all in that kind of situation. Hurricane Ernesto is strengthening and moving toward Bermuda. So hurricane warnings issued for Bermuda as Ernesto continues to gain strength. So Debbie had already hit the Caribbean islands and all along those lines, and now it looks like Ernesto is going to head that way as well. And Russia has sentenced dual citizen Kasina Karolina to 12 years in a penal colony for what they are saying is treason. So that was, they gave her a 12-year treason sentence to the Russian American over a $50 charity donation. So it was a $50 charity donation, and now the LA ballerina has been sentenced to 12 years in a Russian penal colony. So we'll see if there's efforts to get her out as well, just like there was for Brittany Griner, and hopefully those will be successful as well. And after nights of vandalism, a forensic team has reached the Calcado Hospital. So definitely there are a number of things that are still going on that as those massive protests in India continue after the doctor's rape and murder. And apparently there was a Reclaim the Night kind of event as well. So definitely that is something that is going on in that part of the world. Iran's new president is asserting the right to retaliation in a rare phone call with a major U.S. ally. So Iran's mixed signal leaves some allies in the dark and sets the region on edge. So apparently there's a joint statement from the United States, United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Italy on the Middle East a couple of days ago. And Iran is apparently considering retaliation strategy and economic risk amid cyber attacks. And so those are some of the things that are taking place in that part of the world. And definitely more than 40,000 have been killed in the Israel war in Gaza, according to the health ministry. And definitely there's even an article that talks about some of those that had lost their lives that included a poet, a karate champion, and a famed artist. But definitely they're saying that as the Gaza death toll passes 40,000, corpses are being buried in yards, streets, and tiered graves. So definitely that is something else going on as well. And Zelensky, coming back to the Russia-Ukraine war, is saying Ukrainian troops control the Russian town of Sutia. So definitely that is something going on. So they're attacking both Kursk and Sutia. So definitely that is something that we are seeing. And Japan has canceled flights and suspends bullet trains ahead of Typhoon Ampil. So it definitely looks like while a hurricane might be approaching the United States or in this general area as it hits the Caribbean, a typhoon is hitting there in Asia, and that has disrupted flights and trains. So definitely that's something going on as well. And apparently, Prime Minister Modi has called for an end to India's religion-based laws. So definitely, apparently in his Independence Day speech, he was framing the UCC as a secular civil code in his message on women's safety. So he has also promised 75,000 new medical seats so students need not go abroad. So he's apparently trying to get some of his medical students to actually stay there in his area and all in that kind of way. Let me get to some of the things happening in the United States, and then I'll bring in my esteemed panelists and all along those lines. Columbia University president resigns after the Gaza protest turmoil. So, Colombian President Minoche Chavez steps down months after protests over Israel and Hamas war gripped that campus. So, the GOP lawmakers are celebrating the resignation of that Columbia University president. And Wall Street is weighing in on Harris' agenda as her momentum continues to surge, and all in that way. I see a lot of denial as C-suite advisor says business bosses still expect a Trump win. So there's some Wall Street types that are thinking that Trump will win over Harris and all along those lines, but there is no doubt that there is a surge. And Kamala Harris is to propose a ban on price gouging for food and groceries. So Harris is to propose a federal ban on corporate price gouging in food and groceries, and apparently she's zeroing in on high food prices as inflation remains a big issue in the presidential race. So we've already known that Trump did that no tax on tip kind of proposal, and now it looks like and Kamala actually backed that and came up with her own version, and now she is proposing a ban on price gouging. So there are some folks that are saying that there's some gouging going on in that way. And there are folks that are still thinking about the Sonia Massey case. One person says she was my superhero and she was remembered by friends and family. And there are apparently going to be changes in law enforcement hiring. At least that's what some folks are asking for, including her family attorneys, that could prevent tragic deaths like that of Miss Massey. So the attorney saying that the Safety Act failed to stop a former sheriff's deputy, who was accused of Massey's murder. So apparently there was already something in place that apparently did not work. And Oklahoma City is to pay over $7 million to clear death row inmates who spent almost half of their life in prison. So it looks like they are going to be to an inmate, not inmates, but it looks like Oklahoma City has approved a $7 million settlement for a man who was wrongfully imprisoned and all along those lines. And he was there on death row, but it looks like he's going to get some money and hopefully can get his life back on track and all in that way. And by the way, we do have a vice presidential debate. So it looks like J.D. Vance has agreed to debate Tim Walz on October 1st. So we knew about the debates that were coming up with the presidential candidates, but now it looks like we have a debate date set for J.D. Vance and Tim Walz, and that will be on October 1st. So that's something that folks will be looking forward to, and all in that way. So the Texas Attorney General, on another story, is threatening a lawsuit over the state fair banning guns. So apparently they were banning guns there at the state fair in Texas, and that's something that local lawmakers over there are pushing back on. So I guess maybe you can't take a gun to the state fair in Texas and all along those lines. But we'll see if that stays or doesn't stay and what happens in that way. And it looks like, speaking of Harris and Walz, that they were having rallies in Milwaukee, or planning rallies in Milwaukee during the Democratic convention. So, and Senator J.D. Vance is blaming Vice President Kamala Harris for inflation at a campaign stop in Western Michigan. And don't forget that next week will be the Democratic convention. We've already had the Republican convention, so the Democratic convention will be coming up next and everything. And by the way, Biden was having some of that homespun humor yesterday and all along those lines, because apparently there were some influencers that he was wooing, and he was having everything from conversations around bowling and selfies and Dougie. And apparently he joked about life after the White House, saying that he'll be looking for a job. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. There are some people that are saying that he was struggling to take selfies as he arrived at an influencer event without saying a word. So definitely it looks like folks will probably be making jokes about that as well. So we'll see what folks have to say, including Sasha and Rick, about this debate that is now looking like it's going to happen. So that is a wonderful thing. So we'll see what they've got to say about that, as well as what they've got to say about the economic issues and all about those lines. There was this whole conversation around price gouging. And apparently, this is a issue that Kamala Harris is going to try to use as a important issue on the campaign trail and everything, because a lot of people have been complaining about grocery prices, the prices of eggs, prices of bread, and I guess she's feeling that maybe the stores are gouging us, so she wants to propose something that would stop that. So, any thoughts on that?
I've seen studies that say that half of inflation is price gouging. Sasha maybe probably knows more than I do.
I agree. Absolutely.
So this could be a good one.
It's a part of a US or Western style economy. So business is actually one of the targets is to extract the biggest possible price for whatever products you're producing or whatever you're selling. That's a part of doing business. It would be strange if they wouldn't try to extract the highest possible price. They should have been fired there because they're not doing their job for their shareholders and the overall enterprise. So this is absolutely natural. I'm surprised about even discussing that because if what could defeat that if it would be more competition would easily deal with all this nonsense. So it appears to me that there's not enough competition, which allows for this price gouging.
There, I've just read a long string on Twitter from Cory Doctorow about how there are laws in place to stop like the Walmarts of the world from dominating markets, which and Amazon, which leads to price gouging.
Yeah.
But that they stopped being enforced under Reagan. So after 40 years of not, you've got Amazon ruling the world and taking a 45% commission on anything they sell, which leads to price increases. Also driving little businesses out, which leads to what they call food deserts
Right.
in poorer neighborhoods where all you have is maybe $1 store.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you go to dollar stores, but often they're just super sucky. There's like, there's the shelves are empty, and
They have to try 50-cent store instead of dollar store.
we just lost all our 99-cent stores. They couldn't keep going.
Yeah, but some of those dollar stores, like I know Family Dollar and some of the other ones, aren't really even the dollar stores. So sometimes they claim that the prices will be $1 or less, but some of them wind up being a little bit over $1. And all along those lines, we got Toby joining us as well. And I wish Kit was here because I had a question for everybody, but maybe folks have a thought because I did not get to it yesterday. How concerned are we about a rise in meth and maybe it coming in unusual places? Because I know in New Zealand, which I reported yesterday, it came in candy. So literally they found the meth in a severe amount of candy packages. And I want to say here in the United States, it might have been in either Arizona or New Mexico, it was in celery. So how concerned are we about meth imploding into the U.S. and maybe
I'm a meth fan because like meth is so much better than fentanyl, because with meth you take a normal dose of meth and you get a normal high. With fentanyl you can't do it because a fatal dose of fentanyl is 2 grains, the size of 2 grains of salt will kill you. So you can't. People make all sorts of fatal mistakes with fentanyl, and meth takes years to kill you compared to fentanyl.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know, Jacoby's got other things going on in life other than meth, so I think he's trying to stay away from that. Sasha, one question I was going to ask you is because I know that he paid people to join the army, and now I guess Putin is paying people to dig trenches because he wants to try to stop the Ukrainian invasion. I think the figure I heard was $4,000 and everything. So, one, where's he getting this money from, and is that going to help him get enough people to dig enough trenches to stop Ukraine from coming into Russia? Since, of course, we know about 3 years ago, they invaded Ukraine, and now Ukraine has turned the table, and now he wants to pay people $4,000 to dig trenches.
Well, you remember that in 1941, Germany has invaded USSR, and for some time they were quite successful. They amassed an incredible amount of territories, killed quite a lot of people, but we know also the end of this war. Now, same thing happened here. The Russia started the assault on Ukraine. It was believed that they will take Kiev in 3 days, or maybe a week, or maybe even like 2 months, or maybe 2 years, or maybe 20 years. And it remains to be seen how they're going to take over Kiev. It's not going to happen, period, not in 200 years at all, because very soon, of course, Russia will start to disintegrate. It's a country that just its size compared to population available is the most bizarre situation in the world. When you see a landmass of probably 1/6 or maybe even 1/7 of the all land mass in the world, populated by tiny 140 million people. So what is 140? Is it 2% of the world's population, or maybe three? I wish I would know, but something like that. So that just
2%.
doesn't make sense. It's only 2% of the
160 million out of 8 billion. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 2% of the world's population living on 1/6 of the land mass available in the world. It just doesn't make sense. Okay, so maybe this country is uniquely positioned to supply the world with unique goods, services, or something that the world needs and cannot get anywhere. Okay, let's examine what it is. Obviously, it is weapons, it's corruption, it's prostitution, and frankly, I think the world could get by without this wonderful export products of Russia. And therefore, it just doesn't make sense the mere existence of this country. It has to be dissolved, and several independent countries, viable countries, led by their own local people, have to emerge in that colossal landmass. Nothing short of that will satisfy. And Ukrainians are very brave people that they finally started to onslaught, thanks to, by the way, to Western weapons and ammunition and finances available. Now, when the ATACMS, when the HIMARS, when everything comes and comes, like every day there are several heavy C-17s are arriving to Germany and Poland from the United States, full of ammunition and weapons and so on. Now you can see something is happening. Yes, it is happening. It's just a beginning.
Sounds like it and everything. Hey, Rick and Sasha, how long is it going to take? Because it took a number of, I think it took a year or so for us to get Brittany Griner out, and she was a star of the Olympics and everything. How long is it going to take to get this dual citizen ballerina out now that she has been?
It took years to get our latest set of, and I don't know who we're holding, because we need people to trade. So did we use up all our captured Russian spies, or do we still have a few more?
That'd be the question and everything, and I don't know the answer to that, but maybe they can figure out.
Well, didn't they have to, because of, what was it, the multiple other countries that they had to grab?
It involved 7 countries. It was like some crazy, so she could be there for a while.
Yeah, and then you got sanctions that you might be able to lift, but depending on what goes on with, everything that Sasha was just talking about with the Ukraine and Russia war that's going on, I mean, there's just, it could be a while.
What's the difference between prisoners held in Russia and the prisoners held by Hamas? what's the fundamental difference there? There's no fundamental difference.
Well, I mean,
No.
Hamas. I'd rather be held in Russia than by Hamas. You're held by Hamas, you're gonna freaking die.
Okay, that's quite possible, but fundamentally there is no difference because people held in these two countries, they are doomed, they're tortured. Eventually, most of them will be killed. I don't see any fundamental difference at all.
So the fundamental difference that I see is that with Hamas, they're captives. They were stolen. But they don't have the legitimacy of a government actually doing it. And it's not saying that the Russian government is legitimate. It's just saying that there's the fundamental difference is only in the fact that you have a terrorist organization that was acting as a government, but you actually have a government entity
acting as a terrorist.
Exactly. So that's there's your fundamental. That's the only fundamental difference that's there.
Also, I mean, if you're a woman held by Hamas, you're going to be raped.
Well, that's a distinct possibility, but they're saying that there have been some accusations of rape on the opposite side as well. I'm not saying those accusations are true, but I do know there have been some investigations about what is going on with Israel and everything. But do we think that there's any possibility, because there are folks that are talking about it, about there being a true ceasefire, and if so, will it happen in the next month or so? Because apparently we've got some Western countries that are trying to make this ceasefire happen, including some countries in the Middle East. So is there going to be a ceasefire? This is August, say by the winter time, or maybe early next year, or maybe even in a day or two. So what is folks' take on these ceasefire negotiations? Will they have any results?
I don't know that we know. It's a huge black box over there. It's like you'd think that at some point Hamas would agree to something, because their numbers, I would guess, keep dwindling. They started off with 30,000 Hamas, and now they're down to maybe 10,000. And at some point, you have, if you get down to 5,000, do you even have a fighting force? Or I don't know.
Yep, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
What the tough part is that you had, before the Hamas leaders were assassinated, you had Hamas kind of on the fence about actually doing the ceasefire, but it was more Israel that did, or Netanyahu didn't want to do the ceasefire. But now it's kind of flip-flopped, where Israel was more on the fence about doing the ceasefire, but now Hamas is actually making more demands and wanting to go back on the agreement that they just did. It's a very complex situation right now. I think Rick is right. We don't know.
These Hamas leaders, they are not only cowards, they are also fools. They just don't understand that all these negotiations, it's a trap set by Netanyahu to lure them into believing that, a little bit here, a little bit there will be a peace or so on. No, there will be no peace. It will be extermination of the Hamas until the very last one will die. So there's all these peace negotiations. I laugh at it. It's so bizarre. There has to be a complete capitulation. Nothing short of that will satisfy Israeli people.
Honestly, the Israeli people are wanting. There are many in there. I think there was a poll. What was it? 60 some odd % wanted a ceasefire as well. Because again, in this whole battle, we have in the mix-up, you have a lot of people being injured, and that is starting to weigh heavily on a lot of people. And I got the 2 dogs back here going crazy, and the child running around wild.
So what the U.S. thinks about the war doesn't really sway Netanyahu.
Mm-hmm.
But
U.S. is U.S. and Israel is Israel.
Yeah, but in the U.S.,
people forget about U.S. Okay, U.S. is over there.
Yeah, but we got to talk about it politically. The U.S. I think there's become Gaza war fatigue that people are. It's been going on for over 10 months, and so I don't know. Like it's summer, so nobody's in college. I don't know if we'll have more protests. I assume we will in September when people go back to school. They shut down our biggest freeway a couple days ago, but it didn't seem like it was a big deal.
I think the
U.S. has its army, it has its police, and U.S. has to deal with its own protests. It's not Israeli problem how U.S. will go.
No, it's not Israeli problem, but it's a political problem in the U.S. or maybe not if we're just sick about thinking about it.
U.S. has to find how to deal with their own problems. Don't touch Israel. Israel has to protect its citizens. Period. That's it.
I think that it's more complex than that because I think it is an Israeli problem because the Israeli people want Netanyahu out. And this is why Netanyahu is still, I don't know if that, I won't say that definitively, but I do feel that that is part of the issue is that Netanyahu knows this. He knows that the people are calling for an election when the war is done. And that is part of the issue while it's still going on. Also, you have Netanyahu coming and speaking at the joint session of Congress, which, I think because of the fact the war is dragging on, and Rick is right, I think people are getting war fatigue, but that war fatigue is actually going against Netanyahu because you even have some Republican individuals who come out and said or talked about ways to protect the Palestinian people. We need to get back to the focus on the hostages and so on and so forth, because the idea for example, with the what happened with the school, was it a school that just got bombed? I think it was
at least one school. Yeah, but
and that hit 90, there was 90 civilians that they were saying, but it possibly could have had 20 Hamas leaders, but does that justify the other innocent civilians? And this was coming from a Republican individual who was talking this way, saying, hey, look, we have to look for a ceasefire. And I think that is what's starting to weigh on people here politically. But you do have individuals, because everybody agrees, and I'm glad that people are starting to listen, that everybody agrees that Israel has the right to defend itself. But I'm starting to hear that people are starting to listen, that the Palestinian people don't deserve to be killed. So, people are starting to finally hear and say, okay, does one person justify the killing of 10 civilians? Does 10 people justify killing 100 people? And this was coming from a Republican guy, one of the former Republican senators. But again, that politically is going to play. It's still a complex situation. But I think going to the protest piece, Kamala Harris has run across a few Palestinian protesters at her rallies, and I think she's handled them extremely well. From one telling, I think there was one time she told them, hey, look, if you're going to keep talking, just go ahead and say that you want Trump to win. The other time she's telling him, hey, look, I'm speaking right now. We can talk about that later. I'm speaking. And that shut them down. And then there was one time where she legitimately said, hey, look, we hear your voices, and addressed them as they were protesting and said, hey, we agree with the ceasefire. We're working hard for the ceasefire, moving on down that way, and address the protesters that way. And I think that, honestly, in terms of elections, is helping her in the long run. But yes, it's a very complex situation.
Okay, explain to me when you're saying that Israel has a right to defend itself. So, what exactly, in your opinion, Israel is allowed to do as defending itself, and what it's not allowed? And where is that line that separates what's allowed and from what's not allowed?
So, for example, I disagreed, and this is just a viewpoint for me, and I I think there are others who have said it as well. But I disagreed with Israel going into other sovereign nations and killing people. That, to me, seems to inflame the situation that's already inflamed.
And therefore, what was the right way of Israel
That's what I'm getting to.
Without going to
No,
where
no.
the enemy is?
But that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
When they're going to, for example, when they went to Iran to kill somebody, that is not a defense. That is an attack on somebody else, and that is being, to me, that is being seen, especially by the Iranian people, and this is why Hezbollah is now jumping up and everything else, going into another sovereign nation to murder somebody. Why not work with that sovereign nation to actually have that individual that you're searching for in a different light? That would be a better negotiation. That's what I would feel is a better way of getting the individual that you want to get, because you know you're on the warpath that way. And then as individuals come in, when Iran shot the multiple drone barrage and everything, that's a full-blown defense. That was Iron Dome and everything else. To retaliate against that should be a different way, because this whole battle of, the protection of the Israeli people is necessary. The protection
and how you protect them if you have murderers on borders? The Hezbollah is firing every day missiles on Israel. There are already 100,000 misplaced Israelis, for you to know. And you expect Israel not to go into attacks on the enemy's territory, stay within its own territory, and hope and pray that they all not going to be killed. After Holocaust, that's not going to happen again. And they will go to other territories and they will kill enough murderers to protect their people. That's what's going to happen.
So I just looked it up, and on a weekly basis, there are huge protests against Netanyahu in Israel. We don't hear anything about that anymore, if we ever did. But I have no idea if those protests even accomplish anything.
And honestly, I think they galvanize the people, but they're not. I think it's also going to the idea to Netanyahu, knowing that the people right now technically are against him, but he feels he can turn them his way by going after Hamas and doing all this other stuff.
They're against him as an individual. They support him in his prosecution of the war.
So there could be a better way of prosecuting the war, and I think that's what many people, because everybody, again, you can be against Netanyahu but still for Israel.
So what a lot of the protests are about are saying that what Israel is doing is not getting any hostages freed.
Yeah, but Rick, just really quickly, one of the things that has been going on for decades, I would argue it even went on in the United States as well. They say that one of the quickest ways to kind of sway people and even sometimes to bring in money is the war industry. And that's not just in Israel, but it's in a number of countries and everything. So I do sometimes wonder if, to Jatovi's point, that he is continuing the war and continuing all of these mass casualties, not just to destroy Hamas, but also to keep himself in power.
He's certainly doing that.
In other places where the war was continued in order to keep the ruling powers in, and there's even been cases where rescue efforts have been done at a.
So he's doing that, but at the same time, doesn't seem to be like Hamas isn't giving any indication that there's a stopping point in the near future, even though they keep losing, soldiers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to pivot just slightly, but still keeping it on things that are dealing with guns and all along those lines. But I had a question for Jatovi, and I don't know if you heard the story earlier, but I know Texas, and we have Camden's on the network sometimes, is from Texas, and all along those lines, or has family roots in Texas. but they are talking about banning guns at the state fair, and apparently the prosecutor is upset about that and doesn't want guns banned at the state fair. And I'm going like, I know Texas likes to do things differently and everything, but why do you need a gun at a state fair? Because I'm still trying to figure that out as to why you need a gun at a state fair. But apparently this is a major issue there in Texas because they're going back and forth. I don't think that we allow guns at our state fair here in North Carolina, and I don't know what they do them in California and their state fairs throughout the country and everything. But when I saw that story, I'm going like, I know they like to do things different in Texas, and Texas has its own culture and everything, but I don't know that I need to be going to a Texas state fair if everybody's going to be the Wild Wild West. So,
I mean, it's part of the gun culture. Again, that they might end up with guns at the state fair because Texas is diehard concealed carry. Well, not concealed carry, open carry. I think in Texas an open carry state.
It has to be, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I can see them going again. This speaks to the notion that guns have become something more than just a tool. That is what our nation around, or our culture around guns is. It is moved from this tool to a toy to a display of power, like driving a big truck, the old stereotype there. Now you got to carry a gun around. It's something. It is part of the reason why we have a problem with guns.
Really?
Away from that, we have an idolatry around them now.
Here's what's happening. So the city of Dallas, where they're having the state fair, has banned guns at the fair. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is threatening to sue the city of Dallas. And the major leaders, the governor, the attorney general, the lieutenant governor, it's Texas Republican leadership. They're dickheads, and they hold power by being dickish, because that brings out, far right voters. So, Ken Paxton was on trial for, he's super corrupt, and these Texas is fairly evenly balanced between Republicans and Democrats, but Republicans hold all the leadership in the state, and they get better turnout by keeping people riled up. So this is just a deal to get people worked up.
That makes a lot of sense.
On an interesting note, and I hate to, pivot again, Mark. I don't know if you saw, because there are 2 lawsuits Elon Musk is now a part of.
Elon Musk being sued for now.
So I don't know. I think we talked about it a little bit, because the whole interview with Trump now brought a UAW lawsuit against he and Elon Musk, which I think Trump is going to lose the union workers vote. But because of what they said on there, telling people that they should, it's basically threatening of firing or retaliation. It's illegal for them to do that and stuff like that. But so Elon's a part of that one. Plus, since Elon and J.K. Rowling went on that tirade about the boxer in the Olympics, that boxer is now suing for it was online abuse or whatever it is. So J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk might end up with jail time, just like Trump.
So they both.
It would be awesome it would be awesome if that boxer ends up a millionaire, because because J.K. Rowling has $1 billion from Harry Potter.
Yeah, and they might wind up all 3 of them in the same jail cell. I remember, I think I mentioned in one of the other shows, and one of our other World Editions, and I can't remember which artist it is, but Donald is also running into trouble because of his campaign song, because one of those campaign songs, the artist has said that they did not give him permission to use that song. Here's I'm a very shallow person.
If I were the boxer, I would get a nose job, and I would just get hot. I would, like, when she goes into court, we saw her as the boxer, and she looks, pretty butch. but I would just get like a cute little button nose. I'd walk in a frilly dress. I'd be the hottest lady in the frickin' world, or at least in the courtroom, and then like say, and you're calling me a dude. And
Yeah, that could be an interesting theory to do that, and all along those lines, we can see if that works. Speaking of political campaigns, because I mentioned it at the beginning, we finally have a date for Tim Walz to debate J.D. Vance. Is this going to be a close debate, and are we expecting a close debate between Kamala and Donald Trump and everything? So, what is our take now that we have dates set? I believe that they may still be haggling over the Fox one and everything.
well, closer between Walz and Vance, because they're both reasonably bright guys, and not so close between Harris and Trump, because Trump is, I mean, nobody fact checked Trump in the first debate, and then Biden tried a little bit, but Biden was not nimble with his words in that debate. I feel like Harris will be able to call out Trump more effectively.
Since you're talking about boxing, I would compare this campaign and all those debates with Trump and his side, reminding me more and more a boxer bag. When you're training and there is a bag and you hit this bag and it comes out and then it comes back at you, you hit it even more, and then you hit it more, and this is a bag really of liars, idiots, people who should not be even close to power, such as White House and so on. So they are a bag. And these people, they can punch all they need, all they want. If they're not lazy, they will punch so many times, okay? Or they can go on onslaught and just hit it like 5 times a second and just get this back to a garbage can very shortly. So this is all what there is to it. There's no comparison. There is not, you don't need to do predictions of what's going to happen in debates. I don't think that Trump even will show on debates on the 10th of September. On 11th, he has to be early in court for sentencing. So how he can do the debate, nightly debate, and then get up in the morning and go for sentencing and get his hands tied up and just thrown in jail? I don't see how that happens.
So in World War II, in World War II, we considered all sorts of crazy plots, and one thing we considered but never did, the Allies. The Allies thought that Hitler maybe had like serious sexual issues, and there was a plan to try to drop pornography on Hitler, that if he saw porno, it would drive him over the edge and make him just like completely crazy. And this is kind of going on with Trump, where we know he's pretty crazy, and we know a lot of things that push his buttons, like crowd size. So Harris has been holding all these massive rallies, partly because it gets up enthusiasm, but partly to drive Trump crazy. And I feel like in a debate, before a debate, part of practice for a debate is they hire somebody from her staff to pretend to be Trump and act like they think Trump is going to act. So part of her debate prep will be coming up with as many different ways to push his buttons as possible, hoping he explodes into really weird behavior.
I would open the debate with it, Rick. I would start it off. Well, coming off of our giant crowd size, it seemed like we had about 40 to 50,000 people in the hangar. And then I would go straight into, I am glad that I'm going to take the next 3 days off rather than having to go get sentenced in court. And then after that, then I'll just let it go.
Yeah, and like, remember when he kind of lurked behind Hillary in one debate? If he tries that crap, she can say, you've got to stand farther away. I don't feel safe around a sexual predator.
He's using a surrogate to do it. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's what this whole going to the plane, claiming that it's your plane, which is what J.D. Vance did and everything, and kind of him following wherever the campaign is going. I mean, shucks, he's going to Milwaukee doing the Democratic convention and everything. So there is already some lurking going on. And speaking of lurking, I did find at least two of the singers, because Celine Dion's team slammed the unauthorized use of the Titanic song at the Trump rally, and the one that I was trying to remember, which was a very popular soul singer, and I actually had the pleasure of working with him when he came to the Blues Festival and everything. But Isaac Hayes' family is suing Trump for using his song at rallies. So definitely the Isaac Hayes family is going like, no, we never gave you permission to use that song. I don't know why you're using
He
that
should
song.
probably stick to the Village People. I'm not sure the Village People exists as a group now. So they seem to be less able to sue. And
there's some of them that are still out there and everything. Kim was apparently watching from afar, and she asked us, what do we think of the new Trump ads? One was paid by mental health trying to trigger him, and JD Vance needs his wife to follow him making excuses and explaining his rude, weird outbursts, is what Kim is saying in that sense and everything.
Well, JD Vance's wife did come out, and it is the dumbest thing. She made it even worse because she came out for his defense. She said, well, he wasn't trying to offend these people. He wanted to offend. Why are you going out there to try and offend them in the first place? It's just, that whole JD Vance thing is just crazy. And then I haven't seen the new Trump ad. I've seen a couple of Trump ads, which are pretty funny to me. Yeah.
You brought up a good point. You brought up a good point, and it may even be the question you were going to ask. But I did see that here in North Carolina, where me and Jacoby are, apparently Mark Robinson was there in Asheville, and I think that Rick said that there was some rumblings on Twitter and some of the social media, because apparently it looked like a very small venue, speaking of crowd size and everything. But apparently he's also, meaning Mark Robinson, trying to play up the fact that he had a abortion and all along those lines, because there's the ad running with him and his wife where they are saying how troublesome getting the abortion was, and how he would support the abortion if it was rape, incest, or life-threatening, or something along those lines and everything. But I just wanted our take on one, Mark Robinson, and two, this Asheville appearance, because apparently
all right. So Trump, a bigger venue in Asheville, I think, wouldn't make itself available to him. So he had to hold a rally in a place that only held 2,400 people. And, the question I think you have to keep asking, especially over the next 12 weeks until the election, is whose mind will this change?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I used to think the game was to trigger Trump to the point where he said something inexcusably crazy. Like, if we know that he uses the N-word in private, if you could get him to say the N-word at a rally, I used to think that would lose him some votes. But now I'm not sure, because all the people who would be offended by that may have already left him. And so, I don't know. Like, what is going to change the minds of the several percent of people who haven't yet decided?
It's JD Vance. Because, again, JD Vance is parroting. Nobody knew JD Vance, so people are trying to listen to JD Vance. JD Vance has changed his name multiple times. He's also flipped his position and all this other stuff, but yet they're attacking people for flipping their positions. They're attacking people for using a different name. And so JD Vance, that magnifying glass happening on him, because he's saying the same things that Trump is saying, people are starting to hear Trump. And people are starting to notice that Trump said the same thing in 2016, that we're going to be in World War III if Hillary Clinton gets in office. The stock market's going to drop if Hillary Clinton gets in office. All these people are going to steal your. What did he do in 2020? Joe Biden is going to cause World War III. Joe Biden is going to. So he's saying the exact same thing. Joe Biden, well, remember, Hillary Clinton was the most liberal, according to Trump, the most liberal Democrat. But then Joe Biden came along. Joe Biden's the most liberal Democrat. now Kamala Harris. So people are starting to hear it and starting to hear the repetition. They're getting bored. Many are starting to say, okay, I'm tired of this hatred and this vitriol. I don't need to be this way, but this is all your stuff is. I mean, even if you just watch the two ads, one from Kamala and one from Trump, one sounds like death is coming. The other one sounds like, okay, this is kind of fun. There are disagreements, but it's okay. So that happy warrior that Kamala has been pulling has been working. And talking of that conference or the presser that Trump did in Asheville, that was supposed to be his economic message. And people have begged him from the Republican Party. Top Republicans have begged him stay on message. So his big thing in Asheville was supposed to be this economic message. He went straight down the path of, oh, well, Kamala's just dumb. Oh, Kamala's the most liberal. Oh, just name calling and back to the same thing. So people are hearing it now because of JD Vance, and people are not liking it because before it was baked in. It's like, okay, but now I don't really like this anymore. Somebody.
I'm sorry. One thing. Yesterday, it came out that year-over-year inflation dropped under 3% for the first time in 3 years. And so it's 100%, right, Sasha, that the Fed will cut rates in September.
Absolutely.
Which will goose the stock market a little bit, not a lot, because that's already probably
flying every day, yesterday and today and day before yesterday. It's flying. It's going. Dow is well over 4,000 now, and it goes to much higher things. Now, what is? I feel sorry, really, looking even at my age, younger than Trump a few years, but what a deterioration of his mental facilities. He's now like, when Biden was, okay, you can compare, okay, he has more energy than Biden. Biden screws things up. He can walk better than Biden. So it was a quite favorable impression of overall what Trump is. Today, Biden's gone, and you can see a little old man who has difficulties to talk coherently. And you say, oh my God, what a deterioration. And that creature is going to be a president of the United States. Please give me a break.
So I get scared for myself. I'm 64, and I see these guys. I see Trump and I see Biden, and I'm like, how many more years do I have where my brain is okay? And like, I'll sit there, a movie will come on, and I try to like name all the actors to make sure that like my memory still works.
Yeah, that memory thing, that's real, because like I said, I'm 62, so that's a couple of years behind you and everything. But one of the divides that's happening, and I think that's where they use Vance, and maybe even why Kamala was using Tim Walz and everything. But is there any sort of, because it's not just a race and everything, but is there any sort of push that's going to be able to get the rural vote? Because we are definitely divided into rural, urban, and suburban. I know that some people are thinking that the women and the suburban women will go for the abortion issue and some of the women's rights issues. But I'm just wondering, do you think that that divide is going to impact the election as well? Because there's definitely a difference between living in, say, Charlotte and living in rural Kansas. So is that divide going to play into the election?
It always, I mean, the Republicans like to show a map of the counties won by Trump,
Right.
and in red, and then the blue counties in blue, and the country looks all red because, yeah, more liberal voters are concentrated into cities, which are little tiny blips on the map, and then, empty farmland and, desert, those are our Trump counties. So, and then and libs come back and they say, tumbleweeds don't vote, cows don't vote, land doesn't vote. But sure, yeah, it's a big divide. And, if I were advising Harris, I'd just say, keep doing what you're doing, which is hold rallies as much as possible. And yeah, hold some of them in rural states.
I mean, Rick, you're spot on. And And it's just one of those things. I mean, I think most of the rural vote is already decided for Trump. However, I do think that Walz is going to crack some of that rural vote because the Democrat Party has never had someone who can speak to the rural counties, and Walz can. And because of this messaging, the simplistic messaging, what the Democrat Party fails in their messaging or fails to understand in the messaging, especially during the political season, is that people want bumper stickers. People want, hey, I want to say this really quickly and I'm done. I don't need a very nuanced, super hyper educated version of what you're trying to tell me about the economics. I don't need you to tell me that, the full blown. No, just give me something simple. I can work with that. And that's the electorate that we have. And the Democrat Party has never understood that until now. And they are dropping some nuggets of joy. They're in the culture market. They're in the cultural world with Kamala Harris because she is a cultural movement now. She's in that ethos. She's in there. But now you have Walz on the outskirts. He can speak to the dude on the farmlands and just, hey, look, man, this is, and just have a really good conversation that Kamala's not going to be able to have. No Democrat has been able to have before. So I think he's going to crack some of that rural vote.
Walz gives you Friday Night Lights. He
Exactly.
was the defensive coordinator on a team that went from 0-27 to state champions. And the football's a huge cultural, football is men teaching boys to be men, and that's a strong conservative red state value. Also, he's a hunter, so
definitely. Kim, any thoughts?
I think I think he will support some of the things that the Conservative Party is concerned about. I think he just adds a lot of stability to the race. One of the things that the Republican weirdos are, all they talk about, in fact, for a whole hour, I listened to them waiting for my doctor's appointment. It was 1:06, Republican wackos. And for a whole hour, three of them, all they talked about, in fact, I'm going to complain because all they talked about was Harris is not giving interviews. They didn't talk about anything else. I mean, they didn't even put her down about anything else. She just won't give interviews. For a whole freaking hour, three men made jokes about her not giving interviews. But here's the thing to the wackos. I want to get on their radio station and tell them she has already said she's going to give her first interview at the end of August. She's going to give her first. She makes plans. She's a planner. She doesn't knee jerk. Okay. Yeah, they think, just take on the media and headbutt it. And that's what they're upset about because Trump would do it. Well, look how stupid J.D. Vance looks. Look how stupid Trump looks. But she's hitting the campaign trail hard and heavy. She's sticking to her script, and she does things according to plans. Now, of course, that is not the way a good leader has to be all the time. You have to know how to deal with urgent matters that hit you hard and fast. But I think it's very good to have somebody who sticks to a plan, who says, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do, and I will do it, and they will follow through with it. That shows that they follow through with their promises, everything's thought out, and will be handled well. But they're like, oh, no, she needs to come out now. She needs to come out and show us how stupid she is. Ha, 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 ha. Well,
so both on purpose and by accident, the Harris campaign has been playing rope-a-dope. That's from Muhammad Ali, who'd lie back for the first few rounds, let the other boxer tire himself out, and then step in and beat the crap out of him. So the rope-a-dope was Biden was running, then he leaves, so they'd already spent a bunch of energy on fighting Biden. Now Biden's gone. They're spending a lot of energy on, oh, you're not giving having press conferences. Well, it might be when she finally has one that she's really prepared, and then that whole issue blows up again for the Republicans.
Yeah,
Well,
no
look
doubt
at
about it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, look
I'm
at what they
gonna have to
did
go.
with.
Thank you guys.
Always good to see you, Kim.
Go ahead.
But I was just gonna say, look at what they did when Biden fumbled the debate. The Republican Party, Trump, even none of them did anything. What ended up happening is they kept letting Biden talk and talk and talk, and then they did the RNC because they didn't do interviews. They didn't even talk about anything. It was just basically they just let Biden himself. And they kept running ads behind it, and that's why they wanted to do the whole, hey, we want to get the documented video from the special counsel so we can chop it up and run more ads. That's what their plan was. Yeah. But now, with Trump imploding, the Kamala Harris campaign is doing the exact same thing. They are not doing interviews. They don't need to because, hey, we're going to do it on our time frame. And then on top of that, Trump is imploding. Why do I need to steal the spotlight while Trump is imploding? And J.D. Vance running out there. Well, Trump has the right to run his campaign. And yet we're complaining, oh, Kamala Harris didn't say any details about what she's going to do. Trump's whole detailed plan about his economics yesterday was, you know what? Inflation's high. I'm going to lower it.
Harris has a reputation for giving roundabout answers based on a few clips. And I bet you that when she actually answers some questions from the press or in a debate, that knowing that that's an accusation against her, she'll probably have really, short
punchy
answers.
right.
She'll take that away from people.
Yeah. Well, it's time to wrap up. I know we've got to record, I believe, the chess show today, and we've also got the whole thing with our regular Barbara Smith show that'll be coming up at noon, which means I'll actually be taping this out at about noon 05 or 12:05 and everything. But we're going to get on out of here, and we'll have some other programming today as well, including definitely this is Thursday, so that means that we'll have the world politics later on, and of course Coco McMillan as well, and a number of other shows. But right now it's time to get on out of here. We'll be back with World Edition on tomorrow, and later on World Politics, since it is a Thursday. So catch y'all later, and we'll have some more interesting discussions.
Bye-bye.